Welcome to My Hometown, the program that explores clubs, organizations, businesses, and issues across Nassau and Suffolk counties and sheds light on the different towns that are making a difference.
Hello and welcome to My Hometown. I'm Bill Horan, along with my co-host, Nassau Community College student Mike DeMarco.
How you doing, Bill? Bill, you know, Halloween is right around the corner, and I'm in the mood for a scary story to put me right in the frame of mind. What you got?
How about a novel written by a Long Islander about haunted Long Island mysteries?
Well, that might be a little too close to home, but I'm open to conversation, so let's do it. Just go easy on me, okay?
You got it, Mike. I'd like to introduce today's guest, Kerriann Flanagan Brosky. She's the author of a new book, Haunted Long Island Mysteries. Kerriann, welcome to My Hometown.
Thank you, Bill. Thank you, Mike. It's nice to be on the show. I was very excited to, talk to you today about my book project.
Well, we're excited to talk to you. And you know from before the show, I already have about 50 extra questions to ask you. But first of all, personally, how are you doing during the pandemic? And does it affect ghost people differently?
It did, actually, because last year I lost my entire book tour. Luckily, this book wasn't coming out until this year. So I do have a lot of events planned for the fall this year, 24 events, 16 of them are in person. So it was a challenge in many ways because I was doing webinars and things last year as opposed to meeting and telling these stories in person. Luckily, though, I had most of the locations. I was already doing investigations before COVID struck. So it's I had just a couple of assignments left, but it was challenging because I had to get into these places to do these investigations. But now, things seem to be up and running and people are excited to see me in person. And I'm just very thankful and grateful to be moving forward at this point.
Well, we're very excited and we want to find out more about the ghosts of Long Island. Mike?
Yeah, yes. So Kerriann, tell us about you. What's your background?
Okay.
What's your background that made you want to be an author in general?
Well, my degree is actually in photography. I went to Long Island University at CW Post, and I specialized in photojournalism. Oh. From there, I went on to work for some local newspapers. I actually worked as an intern photographer for Newsday and some of the local papers. And I moved to the town of Huntington 30 years ago now, and I became really interested in the town's history. So I ended up starting a column. I was photographing different places and doing research of historical places within the town of Huntington with the hopes of teaching, the public about the importance of preserving local history. And that led me to join the Huntington Historical Society, where I was first vice president for 6 years. And that was, a great experience to learn about the town. And when you're researching older homes and things, there always seems to be a ghost story or two that comes with it. I had been doing a lot of lecturing within the town. And then finally, when Halloween rolled around, after I was doing this for a year or so, the Historical Society said, you know what? Because this led to 2 books in 1995 and 97, my column. It was so popular, people loved it. So I wrote these 2 books, and there were probably about, maybe 3 or 4 ghost-related stories in those books, and they had about 20 stories each. Well, we set up a whole thing, my husband and I, in the Conklin Barn right here in Huntington, and we webbed it, and I gave this lecture, and we had things happening during the lecture, and it was standing room only. I could not believe there was 100 people that tried to get into this barn that only seats 50, and I said, I can't believe all these people are interested in ghosts. People would come up to me. This became an annual event, and people would come up to me begging me, please, can you write a book just about ghosts? Now, I wanted to be taken serious as both a journalist and as a historian. I didn't want to be considered a ghostbuster. So I put it on the back burner for a couple of years. It wasn't until I met Joe Giaquinto, who I've been working with for 15 years, that I asked him right on the spot. I said, would you want to work with me? He was a medium and a paranormal person and investigator. And by this point, you had shows out and you weren't being thought of as crazy anymore if this is something that, you believed or had anything to do with. So in 2000, and I guess it was 2004, 2005 timeframe, we started working together. And I wrote Ghosts of Long Island, Stories of the Paranormal. And it was a huge success, and it led me to write a sequel. So just to correct you, it's not a novel, it's a work of fiction, a nonfiction, because they're true stories. And then it just sort of took off. I mean, I'm the author of 9 books, and I wrote also Historic Crimes of Long Island. I co-authored an Italian cookbook, believe it or not, with Mr. Sausage in Huntington. And no, it's not a haunted cookbook. I get that all the time. My other love is food. I was a food writer for Edible Long Island for 5 years. But my love is really with these ghost stories. And I wrote Haunted Long Island Mysteries. Well, that's the new one. And Historic Haunts of Long Island. And I also wrote one novel called The Metal, which has to do with also a true story, but it's a work of fiction. And it has to do with Padre Pio, the saint who bore the stigmata. So I've had a lot of paranormal experiences, a lot of religious experiences. And now this 9th book, we're going out on tour with all these new stories. And what I always say is, what better way to teach local history than through a ghost story?
And that's fun. I'm sure students love it. I think at all levels, there's something about a ghost story, whether you're grade school, high school, college. I remember giving a speech on ghosts once, and I had the class wrapped up, and this was in college. It was so silent. Even the professor afterward goes, "Ooh, that was spooky." And I had done my research at the time and what have you. How do you go about writing these stories, though? Do you walk into someone's house and met any good ghosts lately, or you have a ghost in the basement, or?
It's definitely a process. I mean, again, because I'm a historian, my first thing was that I wanted to show that Long Island is more than the Amityville horror, that we're rich in history, and that it's also very spiritual. Joe and I, what we do is very different from television. People will come up to me and say, "Oh, I saw paranormal activity. Is that what you do? You go into a place and pots and pans are flying around and blood's dripping down the walls." So that's not what I do. Everything is very positive. We stay on the spiritual side of communication because we communicate with these people from the other side, and we do it very respectfully. So a lot of what I have gotten in the past, just by doing book signings and things, is that people will have said to me, "Oh, do you have such and such? I heard that there's a ghost in that house." Or, I'll find newspaper articles or things like that. But a lot of the older homes, mansions, different places on Long Island, they have a ghost or two. And so through my research, the process is, first I'll find out if there's a house or a property that's available to us to go into. I like to include a lot of things that are open to the public, so this way people can visit them. I do have a couple of private homes in there, here and there, just to show that regular people have these things go on as well. So that would be the first step. Once we get that connection, then Joe and I go to the actual location. I've done minimal research at this point because I want to interview the people and see what they have to give me first. And we'll do a sit down with our recorders, and I will ask, I have prepared questions about the history, the property, the ghost stories, that type of thing. From there, we will have obviously access to this location, and we will start doing our investigation. With that, we use our recorders. We use our cameras. Joe is a medium, so he's his own ghost hunting tool. And then we use what's called a ghost box, which we used primarily for this book. It's a transistor radio where, for those of you who are old enough to remember transistor radios, how you'd have to use your thumb and sort of scan and look for, a channel of something to come through. And with the ghost box, one of the wires has been cut, so it's continuously scanning. So you're getting static, you're getting bits and pieces of words from a song, from a commercial, from a news report, whatever. And then the spirits are able to use their energy to connect and actually have conversations with us. So I know we're going to talk about that in a minute. after we do this whole process, and depending on how big the property is, the location, if it's a mansion, obviously it could take a couple of hours. If it's a small historical home, it could take maybe an hour. Then Joe will go back to his office and he'll put together a report for me of his findings, and I will go through all of my photographs to see if there are orbs or apparitions or anything else unusual. And then that's how it starts to come together. Then I further do research, contact historical societies, print out everything. I have folders on every single thing. I'm like a mini historical society here. Highlight everything. And then I transcribe the interview by hand to make sure everything's accurate. And I'm also looking for EVPs, which are electronic voice phenomenon that we get on those smaller recorders through white noise EVPs.
Kerriann, you already have me scared. You mentioned apparitions,
that's the thing.
orbs,
it's not scary.
A ghost. It is to me. I got the chills here. I'm turning it
Think
over
of
to Mike. He's
Scooby-Doo
younger. He can handle this. But you've already
really-
got me concerned here. This is very methodical. I'm impressed.
Well, I just want to.
you know what? Yeah.
I just want to chime in and say you're listening to My Hometown on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. My name is Mike DeMarco, along with Bill Horan. And today we're talking about how to be a successful author with Kerriann Flanagan Brosky, a Long Islander and the author of a new book called Haunted Long Island Mysteries. Now, I have more questions about the EVPs that you mentioned earlier in the Ghost Box recordings. So, how do you know when you get like you're listening to these Ghost Box and you get like how do you know when you get like a real or the right recording, or this is a ghost? I'm listening to a ghost talk right now. How do you? What's that moment like? How do you sort of single out the audio for that?
Okay, well, it's two ways. I'll start with the EVPs, and then I'll tell you about the Ghost Box. Because I was skeptical. I mean, I was someone that always believed in ghosts and things like that. But when I first started working with Joe, and he said, well, how are you going to interview the people? And I took a little Radio Shack recorder. I said, I'm going to use this. He said, well, I just want to let you know that you might get the voice of a spirit leaving you a message on there. And I looked at him like he was insane. And I said, what are you talking about? He said, well, it's called an EVP, electronic voice phenomenon. I didn't really know what to make of this at all. Okay. So this is way back when I was doing Ghosts of Long Island. We were interviewing a couple in Greenlawn who had lived in a house where a lot of paranormal activity had taken place. They had moved, and the house that they were living in now did not have any ghosts in it. They said, we've never had anything happen. They were an older couple, so there were no children. There was no televisions on. And I was doing an interview with them. We happened to be having a nor'easter. Joe had lived out in Hampton Bays at the time, and he was late. And I said, don't worry about it. This was our very first assignment. I said, I'm just interviewing. There's no need to be here. Come whenever you can. So it was a pretty large living room. And you could picture if there was a couch, a huge square coffee table, and then another couch across from that. So you could kind of get that sense of where I was. I put the recorder in the center of the table. Okay. And if you were listening to it, like when I listened to it to transcribe, you could sense how far away the person was to the recorder, okay, by how it sounded. It would be very different from if someone took that recorder and put it right up to their mouth and talked in it. Would you agree with that? Like you would understand the difference in sound. Okay. Yeah. So I'm at home now. The interview's over. Joe came later. A week later, I'm in my house transcribing the tape, and it's very monotonous to do this, when all of a sudden there was a voice of a little girl that said, hold me, in a very loud whisper. And it was as if she had taken that and put it right up to her mouth and said this. Now, this was impossible. Okay. I was there with these people. There was no one else, nothing. And I played it for my husband. He was scared out of his mind. And then I sent it to Joe, and he said, congratulations, you got your first class A EVP. And there are 3 classes, A, B, and C, A being the most audible. It was as if that had to have happened, because I would have always thought that it was something Joe was doing, that it wasn't real. So there was no possible way that this was anybody else. So that was the first example. So then we start doing these projects, and we were getting white noise EVPs in many locations. I started to get them, and it was rivaling Joe at one point for, trying to think, I guess it must have been Historic Haunts of Long Island that came out a few years ago. We were at Katie's bar, and it was just me, Joe, the bartender, and the owner. And, the owner is, a past, I can't remember if he was a police officer or a bouncer, but he was like a tough guy. And everyone knows that Katie's bar is haunted. It's been on several paranormal shows. But I said to him, I said, well, why would you pick this bar, to own when you knew that it had ghosts in it? He says, well, I don't have a beef with the spirits. You can't beat them up or anything like that. And we continued the conversation. When I got home and I transcribed this interview, as soon as he said that you can't beat up the spirits, there was a man talking in the recorder that said, you win. Now, you can listen to these because all of this is available on my website. It's fascinating. So now with this ghost box, that is actually in live time. So the EVPs you hear after the fact, okay, when you go back to listen to the recording. With the ghost box, you're getting it live. So we could, and how we know, like your question was, how do you know that you're really talking to a spirit? Well, if they respond in ways that answer our questions. Again, these are snippets. It's not big conversations. But for instance, for the new book, we were in the Brewster house, which had a lot to do. This is talk at 1700s. We think that the spies had been around that area, including Caleb Brewster. So we had done this session asking back and forth. And one of the answers was Caleb here. Now, how could that be? Okay. Another one, we were in Oyster Bay interviewing Denise Shepard, who is the director of the Oyster Bay Historical Society. And we were asking different questions about this girl that died in the house. And we were getting answers, back from this. At the end of it, a spirit happened to say, Shepard, really loud. And all three of us said, oh my God, he said Shepard, which was Denise's last name. So it's interesting. So how it works is if that thing is scanning, and you were scanning, you'd hear, hello, today, bargain, whatever words would pop up. But what the spirits are able to do, they're able to manipulate that energy and pick out certain words to make it into a conversation almost. And it's fascinating that we've been able to do this because we're that much closer to breaking through the veil and really communicating with the other side. So what makes my book very different from what's out there, not only I take the reader on the actual journey of what it's like for Joe and I to do these investigations, the book is interactive. So if you go to my website, either under my name, Kerriann Flanagan Brosky.com or ghostsoflongisland.com, and go under this book or Historic Haunts of Long Island, you'll see where you can click on EVPs, Joe's EVPs. That will take you to his site, and you could actually listen to the EVPs and read along with the book. And then we leave it up to the reader, to the listener, whether or not you hear them and believe it. But I think most people will. I'm doing a lot of lectures this month. A lot of them are with Joe, and we play these for the audience, and people are blown away by it. Even the people we have interviewed said, I don't know, I don't believe in this. And then they're part of this back and forth live time. And they walk away a completely different person from having this communication.
Kerriann, there always seems to be, when I hear a ghost story, like a negative event, and even that might be something mild that happened, and a ghost is trying to undo it. They left something undone, or they didn't finish a chapter in a book or something. And it doesn't have to be terrible. Sometimes it is. There was a death. There was I think a cemetery in your book that you talked about. And someone, the revolutionary British soldiers took it over and kind of desecrated it. Am I seeing that true? Or do you get ghosts that come back just to say happy birthday to you or wish you pleasant Christmas or congratulations on your new puppy?
Exactly. It depends. When I lecture, the other thing I do is, because people, they say, well, what is a ghost? I'm like, well, you have 2 hours, But I do go over the difference between ghosts and spirits. So, for instance, a ghost is more something that is place-centered, like the ghost of Annette Williamson, who haunts the country house restaurant in Stony Brook. It is probably the most active place on Long Island as far as ghostly phenomenon. She's place centered. So for whatever reason, she chooses not to cross over to the other side. Then we have spirits, which are, it could be your grandparents, my dad, my mom. Those are people that travel with us, okay, that are on the other side, what my belief is in heaven. And they can add things. So you're getting a combination of ghosts and spirits. But then there are also 10 different types of ghosts under the ghost category. And I had studied this, a very famous paranormal investigator, Peter Underwood from London, England, put this together. And Joe and I have used this list and have seen. So for certain things like the Revolutionary War, as you mentioned, that could be trapped energy. So it's not necessarily a person that still is there, but the energy is trapped in space, and we're able to bring it out and either capture an image or make communication. So there are different ways of going around this, but everything we do, again, is positive. We stay on the positive side of communication. If someone said to us, oh, well, there's this haunted house where it was, devil worshipers and drug addicts, that's not for us. Okay, we want conversation with people from the past. And, people say, oh, well, I'm scared and this and that is a scary thing. But you know what? If you think of them in the context that this was someone's father, sister, brother, these were just people, whether it be from the Revolutionary War or present day. And then, you'll get better responses from them. That's just how we happen to work. And, we'll have these conversations with them, and it's amazing. It truly is.
Now that we're getting into the grit of what ghost is what, I also just want to sort of bring up, I guess, the image of ghosts that I mentioned in your book, the Orbs. But before that, I just want to mention that you are listening to My Hometown on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC. My name is Mike DeMarco, along with Bill Horan, and today we are talking about how to be a successful author with Kerriann Flanagan Brosky on a Long Islander, and the author of a new book called Haunted Long Island Mysteries. So back to these orbs. So I know you mentioned them in your book and you mentioned them earlier. Now, is this like sort of the image that we would sort of get as a ghost, sort of similar to like EVP? Now, is this what we would see possibly in like a photograph or even maybe a video?
Mm-hmm. Yes, definitely. Again, everything is made up of energy. So these spirits are made up of energy as well. We're made up of energy. And because of all the technology we have, that's why we're getting all this phenomenon. So what an orb is, it's a light anomaly. And it's a round ball, and they're usually translucent. And each orb is different, just like a person is, because they're thought to be people. They can be angels, saints, parents, friends, historical figures. And they use the light from a flash to form. And people say, oh, well, the skeptics will say, well, it's a dust particle. Remember, my degree is in photography, so I know the difference between a dust particle and orb. A dust particle will stay in the frame for the whole. If you take 20 pictures, it'll still be there until you clean it. Where an orb moves around the frame and disappears. It's also translucent, where a dust particle is not. They can be colored. They can be speckled. Sometimes they have images of a face in it. I've captured ones with a dog. Joe captured the face, a matrix image of the face of Annette Williamson, who owns the Country House restaurant. I spent a couple of years ago, I spent a lot of time learning about them and experimenting with them. And I would get the same orb, whether I was in Montauk, North Carolina, Florida, and I would blow it up and it would be identical as far as color and what was in it. And I realized that could be my dad, surrounding me. So they're actually a good thing. People don't take notice of them. Regular people are getting these. For instance, my mother-in-law said, she's a very religious woman, and she said, well, I've never ever seen this. I said, let's go back to some of the family photos, come from very close family. And she was always famous for getting all these group shots. And I said, look at this. Look what's on the wall behind the group at Christmas time. And she says, oh, my God, I can't believe it. So people don't realize that they get them. I mean, again, because of my expertise in photography, I'm looking at what's around people. That's why I don't get, people having a lampshade on their head kind of picture, because I'm moving around, looking around the frame. But most people are not looking at that. But our family members are always with us, and they want to make their presence known. So if Aunt Harry was always at Christmas Eve dinner, he's going to be there again, even when he crosses. The same thing when we do these investigations. I have a great picture in the book. Joe and I were at the Brewster house again, and we weren't getting anything. And we went up to the attic, and I said, look, we'd love to be able to share, just so people know that this was an active house, that a lot of people passed through here. It had a rich history. Could you just make yourselves known? And we waited, and I took a couple of pictures. There was nothing. All of a sudden, there were hundreds of orbs. And this lasted, I would say, maybe 30 seconds, and enough for us to get the photos. And then they were gone. And we were taking pictures, and not one appeared. Absolutely amazing. I have a really big one that I took at the William Sidney Mount house. And we had a lot of communication with William Sidney Mount. He was a genre painter from the 1800s, and he had been a spiritualist in his lifetime. And so he's a very good communicator. So we got a lot of orbs in his house, along with ghost box recordings. But I have a photograph in the book of Joe in the attic where William Sidney Mount had his studio and where he lived. And Joe has the orbs on him. I mean, the photograph, he has orbs on him. And there were a couple of shots in the book. I think Thompson House in Setauket had Joe with orbs in it as well. And so to me, it's a comforting thing. I tell people, if you get pictures of orbs, it's a good thing, because you're almost protected. You can get them on video. Joe has captured them on video on his cell phone. I find, though, that when I work, I have two cameras. I have a Nikon D80, which is a big, huge camera with the battery pack, the flash, all of that. But I get more orbs when I use a Nikon Coolpix. And people say, why is that? Well, just like anything else, if I gave one of you my big camera and say, okay, take a picture, you'd be like, oh my God, how do I work this? But if I gave you the Coolpix, you'd say, okay, I just press the button. Well, the spirits are the same way. They'll go after what's easier for them to use.
Kerriann,
so that's basically what an orb is.
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I want to make sure our audience knows that the book is Haunted Long Island Mysteries by our guest, Kerriann Flanagan Brosky. And Kerriann, could you tell us, where is the book available if someone's looking for it?
The book is available in a lot of different places on Long Island. It's, specialty stores. It's available, I think, in some of the Walgreens and things. You can also get it on Amazon. But if you want a personalized copy of the book from me, you can buy it directly through my website. I offer free shipping, and you should get it within a couple of days. I can personalize it to whoever. And then sign it.
And do we get a free ghost with that? Does the ghost come with it?
No, ghost doesn't come with it.
Not with the book, okay.
Unfortunately, not with the book.
We want to thank our guest, Kerriann Flanagan Brosky, a Long Islander, and the author of the new book, Haunted Long Island Mysteries. Kerriann, we appreciate you taking time out to spend with us today and inform us and educate us all about ghosts and unusual apparitions. Thanks so much for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
I'm Bill Horan. I'm here with Mike DeMarco. We want to thank you for listening to this week's special edition of My Hometown.
We like to get your feedback on My Hometown. Send your comments to WHPC@ncc.edu. Nassau Community College, where success starts and continues. Till next time, this is Bill St. James. And remember, there's no town like your hometown.